One of the most successful SaaS investors of all time said that SaaS is dead, and public SaaS stocks are now trading below the S&P 500, which as a B2B SaaS founder can be quite scary. But in my opinion, it's actually one of the biggest opportunities ever, because if you can make your SaaS AI native, this is going to increase your TAM and increase your LTV. And I know this is a buzzword that's thrown around all the time, but as a SaaS founder whose first business failed, but then my second one exited for 7 figures after scaling it to 40,000 users in 103 countries, I understand the difference between SaaS businesses that succeed and fail. So in this video, I'm going to be walking you through an AI native SaaS blueprint that is going to give you 5 steps to increase your LTV and increase your TAM to scale and maybe one day exit. So as I've already said, public SaaS stocks are down and you've got people all over the internet that are bearish on SaaS. But in my opinion, it's a huge opportunity because let's be honest, people are saying that SaaS is dead, but yet Lovable is a SaaS, and it's literally the fastest business ever to get to 100 million ARR. So clearly not all SaaS is dead, but there's a clear difference between the SaaSes that are growing faster than ever and the software businesses that are dying. And to give you an example of this, if we look at Stack Overflow versus Cursor, Stack Overview, people go to it, it's a system of knowledge. It's giving you knowledge, of how to improve your coding and overcome bugs. You then compare this to Cursor, which is a system of action or execution. It's growing faster than ever. And that's because it's taken effectively what Stack Overflow did in a lot of ways and automated it and meant that you don't even need to worry about the issues you're facing. It just builds it for you. And this is the mindset we need to be thinking about when it comes to growing our SaaS. Step 1 of this is eliminating manual user work. What I want you to do is list every single step from sign up to activation and then your aha moment. Your aha moment is the moment in your software which when someone gets to, they think, this is exactly what I was waiting for. This is exactly the product that I need. The users that hit that moment are usually going to be much less likely to churn. And on top of that, I want you to list every decision that a user has to make and every manual input they have to make along the way. So, even on your sign up form, what are the fields that they have to fill in? Are there any integrations that they have to connect up, et cetera, et cetera. And then I want you to apply this filter. So remove completely if it's not needed. So for example, on this, having the password entry twice, it's just not needed. They can remove this. Then I want you to automate it if possible. And then if there's something that really still has to be there, of course you can keep it, but you need to be, look at Lovable, even adding these things like the login method that was last used by that user, that reduces the friction and over time makes it less likely they're going to cancel. And I'm a massive believer in these 1% improvements across the whole sequence from onboarding to paying on your SaaS. So that's what I want you to do. Now, an example of this is if we compare Google Slides to Gamma. Again, Gamma's another software business that is growing faster than ever. Before there was a ton of manual work and all effectively Gamma did is turn it from input to output. They remove the manual steps that you need to go through to get a beautiful presentation, and that's why they're growing faster than ever. And that links on to step 2, which is collapsing your product from input to output. Every single one of your users has a list of jobs to be done, i.e. what do they need to do in their day to achieve their desired results. What I want you to do is turn these lists of jobs to be done into an automated workflow. Now, this may likely cover features that you don't yet have in your software. So we're going back to the fundamentals of this when it comes to our SaaS, but bear with me. Because what I want you to do is write down all the steps that they currently go through in order to achieve the end result that they're looking for. As you do that, identify what they really want. Why are they doing something? What is that end result that they're looking for? And then design your product to generate that instantly. For example, I sold an SEO tool, and if I was going back to start another tool, what I would do is I'd map out all the steps that someone goes through in order to optimize their page and rank higher on Google. They do keyword research, they see what competitors are ranking for, they click on keywords that are interesting them and they look at the data. And along every single one of those steps, they obviously have pain points. They might be unsure. A lot of people don't know what to do with SEO. They have no idea where to start. These things are really important that, they don't know what good looks like. Because when you understand those pains, what you're then able to do is go from input to just achieving the end result. And a really good example of that, this is the keyword research process to then optimize a page. You then look at a tool like Outrank, you can see they've literally just gone from you input your business, you get a strategy, and then it generates articles on autopilot. However, if you didn't go through and map out all the steps that someone needs to go through to generate articles that rank and get them target customers. You wouldn't be able to then build the tech behind the scenes to generate that end result. So it's quite manual, but this definitely isn't something that you should skip no matter where your MRR is, because a lot of the times as SaaS founders, we ignore these and we have to move back to the basics to become AI native. Now, the third step, obviously at this point, you've eliminated manual user work, you've gone from input to output. I then want you to ruthlessly improve your first output. Your objective is to have someone think, wow, I can never go back to the old way of doing things. This is your new aha moment. The aha moment that you want to achieve in the AI native world is make someone think that they could never go back to the old way of doing things. Now, what good enough works, my criteria is it should be usable without editing. A lot of the times, think about Gamma, right? You generate a presentation, but a lot of the times you still have to edit and improve that presentation. You should be ruthlessly working to get that output as good as possible, because that's what your competitors are doing, and that's what an AI native competitor will be doing that could take your market. You obviously need to make sure it's better than what users could create themselves, and you need to make sure it feels like a shortcut, not a draft. 6-12 months ago, for sure, we were using AI to create a first draft. But the reality is AI is now good enough to create the end result, and that's what you should ultimately be aiming for. Now, how you ultimately do that, practical ways that you can do that is, first of all, focus on the input. The input and the data that you use should be high quality. And that makes it less likely that competitors and ChatGPT, Claude can just copy you. The quality of the input is proportional to the quality of the output. So improve the data that goes in and ruthlessly improve your prompting. What I actually did in a SaaS business that I was working with, we actually created a dashboard where you could see all the system prompts and you could quickly press generate output to just constantly go through, tweak the prompt, see what the output would look like, and be able to create a really tight feedback loop so we could get the prompt as good as possible, not having to wait, to deploy a new version to Naval to then test it on live to see what the prompt does. So I definitely spend time working on that. And to begin with, focus on just one core job. Especially if you're a vertical SaaS, a lot of the time you just need to be very good at one specific thing in order to increase your TAM and your LTV. Because while people are using Claude and ChatGPT, right now, they're not very good at doing really specific vertical use cases in certain industries. So I'd make sure you focus on one core job first, like creating a presentation and then expanding from there. And to give you an example, Livable did not start with security tests, fixes, SEO, analytics, cloud, databases, etc. They literally just allowed you to turn a text prompt into code. That was all. They got very, very good at that. And based upon user feedback, they improved from there. So you don't have to start huge. You can just start with one specific feature and go from there. And you ideally, as I said, want to be aiming where users think, wow, this just saved me hours of time. And that's going to be the difference between businesses that succeed and fail in this AI native era. Now, step 4 is I want you to heighten your new feature bar. A lot of businesses, because it's so easy to release new features with Claude Code, with Cursor, they're constantly adding new features. And in my opinion, this is one of the biggest things that SaaS founders are doing wrong, especially those that want to get to 100K a month. Because if you're not actually measuring and critically thinking through how the features that you're adding are improving retention, NRR, churn, then you're just spraying and praying, and that is not how businesses, that is not how SaaS businesses scale and build a business that is worth exiting. You need to be heightening the bar at which you decide whether a new feature should get added, and you should more aggressively verticalize. Because in a world where you can build anything, I want you to build less. Go very deep in your expertise. General tools are getting beaten every single day by MCPs, Claude, ChatGPT. So I want you to go deep and critically think about how the features you add improve the metrics that you want to improve to increase your MRR and your exit multiple. Ensure that you've got an industry focus on deep niche features, target a smaller target market, and don't be afraid of longer, complex sales cycles. Because even though my background is PLG SaaS, if you can deeper integrate within the businesses that you're working with, that's going to allow you to get more data from them, which increases the quality of the input, which is therefore going to increase the quality of the output and the models that you're going to be adding within your SaaS. And then finally, moving on to step 5, we've already eliminated manual user work. We've collapsed your product into input to output, and then we've ruthlessly improved that output to be able to delight our users. The final thing that I want you to do, and this is the last stage of becoming an AI native SaaS, is move from output to execution. So rather than just generating outputs, like generating a blog article, for example, I want you to move towards completing the job. So before in step 3, an output is here is your result. We want to be moving towards an execution model, a system of execution where the SaaS does it for you. And the reason we want to do that is 2 key reasons. First of all, the bar at which people are using software and not cancelling is higher. They're expecting execution, but it's also going to increase your LTV and TAM because you're going to be able to eat into employee budget, not just software budget. Because when you can deliver execution, that means that businesses have to hire less people, which means they have more money to spend on your software, which is going to increase your LTV and TAM. And I really like this visualization. The software 1.0 model was a system of record, so a system of information, where essentially you had a UI UX on top of a record layer like Salesforce, and essentially people would do things off the back of the recommendations and data. We then moved to software 2.0, where it was a system of engagement, so Slack, where you've got this engagement layer, this UI that's sitting on top of some business logic and ultimately a database. But we're now moving towards this system of work or execution, where we have this UI UX on top of this work layer, which is ultimately agents and software completing tasks for us, and that's where we need to be moving towards. So AI native SaaS wins by eliminating work, not improving workflows, so providing the execution for businesses, and that's how you're going to increase your LTV and your TAM. Now, if you found this video helpful, feel free to check out the first link in the description. I work with B2B SaaS founders to get them to 100K a month and exit for 7 figures like I did for last year. Of course, feel free to subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you in the next video.